Another strange issue that you might run into when you're floating elements is that when you float all of the elements inside of a parent element, the parent element loses a reference for how tall it should be. To remember this, you can imagine that these floating children have all left and gone off to college, and since they're not at home anymore, the parent gets sad and collapses. But then what we can do is we can apply a special Clearfix, which will give the parent a reference for how tall to be and allow it to take up the appropriate amount of space surrounding the children. This is a CSS hack that's sort of like if a foreign exchange student comes to live with the parent and makes the parent feel whole again. Here we can see the Clearfix solution that acts as that foreign exchange student that keeps the parent whole. We start off by creating a special class called Clearfix, and this could really be named anything we want, but it's just a convention to call it Clearfix. And then the class name is followed by the pseudo class selector after. And what this will do is any element that we apply the Clearfix class to, it's going to go inside of that element, and after all of the children inside of that selected element, it's going to put this content in, which is just the actual text of the period symbol. So literally, what it's going to do here is when we apply Clearfix to this gray box here, which is the parent, is it's going to go in after all of the children, and it's going to add a little period symbol here. So then we're going to tell this content that we've inserted after all of the children to display block. And remember, block level elements will take up all the horizontal space, and then we'll tell this content to clear both, which will make it clear past the height of any of the floating children above it. So now we have this period symbol here that is displaying block, and it's clearing past the height of any floating children above it. And that will give the parent then a reference for how tall to be. But we don't actually want to see that little period symbol, so we set its visibility to hidden so we don't see it any longer, and we also make sure to set its height to 0 and line height to 0 so it doesn't take up any height. So the Clearfix solution, or the foreign exchange student that comes to live with the parents, is basically the kind of student that you never see. They're always tucked away in their room studying, and we don't actually see them, but it still makes the parent happy. So any parent element that is collapsing because it has floating children, we just simply have to apply this Clearfix class to. Let's take a look at that Clearfix issue with a live code example. So here I have a section with the ID of jazz, and I have another section with the ID of rock. And inside of these sections, I have articles that are children. And the articles inside of jazz are set to float left. And the articles inside of the rock section have been set to float right. And you'll notice because all of the children are floating inside of this parent, it's actually lost a reference for how tall to be. So both of these sections here have collapsed into this thin gray line here. So remember, in order to fix that, we can go ahead and add the Clearfix hack. So I'm going to go ahead and create a class of Clearfix and set it to :after. And then inside of it, I'm going to add some content. And this can be any text content you want. Usually people put something very small, like a period symbol. I'm going to put the entire words "Hello World" just to really emphasize what this is actually doing. So actually for now, let's just stop here and see what just Clearfix :after with content "Hello World" is doing on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and add this class onto the sections that are collapsing. So we'll say class Clearfix. And we'll also apply it to the rock section as well. And then we'll run. Great, so we can see the word "Hello World" is actually appearing here after the children. So again, Clearfix is being applied to this parent, and then :after is going inside of that element we've applied it to, which is this gray box, and it's going after all of the floating children, and it's adding the content hello world. Okay? So far so good. So again, if we make this a period. So now we want to set this content to display block, and we want to set it to clear past the height of anything that's floating. So we'll go ahead and run that. Great. So now we can see that the period symbol is clearing past the height of all these floating children, which is giving the parent, the section with the ID of jazz here, a reference for how tall to be. And you can see the same things happening down here in the section of rock as well. Okay, but we don't really want to see this period symbol here because that's ugly, and we don't want to have it so that every time we clear fix a parent we see some content here. So what we're going to do then is set its visibility to hidden, and we'll set its height to 0 so it doesn't take up any height, and we'll set the line height of the text to 0 also. And that will make it invisible. So even though we have some content here that's after the floating children, that's giving the parent reference for how tall to be, we don't actually see it. So it's kind of like behind the scenes hiding out and giving the parent a reference.